Tien Fang by Chuang. Tien Fang was in attendance upon Prince Wen of Wei. He kept on praising Chi Kung until at length Prince Wen said, "Is Chi Kung your tutor?" "No," replied Fang. "He is merely a neighbor. He discourses admirably upon Tao. That is why I praise him." "Have you then no tutor?" inquired the prince. "I have," replied Fang. "And who may he be?" said Prince Wen. "Tung Ko Shun Su," answered Fang. "And how is it you do not praise him?" asked the prince. "He is perfect," replied Fang. "In appearance a man, in reality God, unconditioned himself. He falls in with the conditioned to his own greater glory. Pure himself, he can still tolerate others. If men are without Tao, by a mere look he calls them to a sense of error and causes their intentions to melt away. How could I praise him?" Thereupon Fang took his leave, and the prince remained for the rest of the day absorbed in silence. At length he called an officer in waiting and said, "How far beyond us is the man of perfect virtue! Hitherto I have regarded the discussion of holiness and wisdom, and the practice of charity and duty to one's neighbor as the utmost point attainable. But now that I have heard of Fang's tutor, my body is relaxed and desires no movement. My mouth is closed and desires not speech. All I have learned, verily, it is mere undergrowth, and the kingdom of Wei is my bane." When Po Tzu was on his way to Chi, he broke his journey in Lu. A certain man of Lu begged for an interview, but when Po Tzu said, "No, I have heard that the gentlemen of the Middle Kingdom are experts in ceremonies and obligations, but wanting in knowledge of the human heart. I do not wish to see him." So he went on to Chi, but once more in Lu, on his way home, the same man again begged to have an interview. "When I was last here," cried Wenpo Tzu, "he asked to see me, and now again he asks to see me. Surely he must have something to communicate." Whereupon he went and received the stranger, and on returning went to sighs. Next day he received him, and again after the interview gave vent to sighs. Then his servant asked him, saying, "How is it that whenever you receive a stranger you always sigh afterwards?" "I have already told you," replied Wenpo Tzu, "that the people of the Middle Kingdom are experts in ceremonies and obligations, but wanting in knowledge of the human heart. The man who visited me came in and went out as per compasses and square. His demeanor was now that of a dragon, now that of a tiger. He criticized me as though he had been my son. He admonished me as though he had been my father. Therefore I gave vent to sighs." When Confucius saw Wenpo Tzu, the former did not utter a word. Whereupon Tzu Lu said, "Master, you have long wished to see Wenpo Tzu. How is it that, when you do see him, you do not speak?" "With such men as these," replied Confucius, "you have only to look, and Tao abides. There is no room for speech." Yen Yuan asked Confucius, saying, "Master, when you go at a walk, I go at a walk. When you trot, I trot. When you gallop, I gallop. But when you dash beyond the bounds of mortality, I can only stand staring behind. How is this?" "Explain yourself," said Confucius. "I mean," continued Yen Yuan, "that as you speak, I speak; as you argue, I argue; as you preach Tao, so I preach Tao. And by when you dash beyond the bounds of mortality, I can only stand staring behind, I mean that without speaking you make people believe you, without striving you make people love you, without factitious attractions you gather people around you. I cannot understand how this is so." "What is there to prevent you from finding out?" replied Confucius. "There is no sorrow to be compared with the death of the mind. The death of the body is of but secondary importance. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. There is no place which he does not illuminate, and those who have eyes and feet depend upon him to use them with success. When he comes forth, that is existence; when he disappears, that is non-existence. And every human being has that upon which he depends for death or for life. But if I, receiving this mind-informed body, pass without due modification to the end, day and night subject the ceaseless wear and tear like a mere thing, unknowing what the end will be, and in spite of this mind-informed body, conscious only that fate cannot save me from the inevitable graveyard. When I am consuming life until at death, it is as though you and I had been once linked arms to be finally parted forever. Is not that indeed a cause for sorrow? Now you fix your attention upon something in me which, while you look, has already passed away. Yet you seek for it as though it must be still there, like one who seeks for a horse in a marketplace. What I admire in you is transitory. Nevertheless, why should you grieve? Although my old self is constantly passing away, there remains that which does not pass away. Confucius went to see Lao Tzu. The latter had just washed his head, and his hair was hanging down his back to dry. He looked like a lifeless body, so Confucius waited a while, but at length approached and said, "Do my eyes deceive me, or is this really so? Your frame, sir, seems like dry wood, as if it had been left without that which informs it with the life of man." "I was wondering," replied Lao Tzu, "in the unborn." "What does that mean?" asked Confucius. "My mind is trembled," replied Lao Tzu, "and I cannot now. My mouth is closed, and I cannot speak. I will try to tell you what is probably the truth. The perfect negative principle is majestically passive. The perfect positive principle is powerfully active. Passivity emanates from heaven above. Activity proceeds from earth beneath. The interaction of the two results in that harmony by which all things are produced. There may be a first cause, but we never see his form. His report fills space. There is darkness and light. Days come and months go. Work is being constantly performed, yet we never witness the performance. Life must bring us back from somewhere, and death must carry us back. Beginning and end follow ceaselessly, one upon the other, and we cannot say when the series will be exhausted. If this is not the work of the first cause, what is it?" "Kindly explain," said Confucius. "What is it to be got by wandering as you said?" "The result," answered Lao Tzu, "is perfect goodness and perfect happiness, and he who has these is a perfect man." "And by what means," inquired Confucius, "can this be attained?" "Animals," said Lao Tzu, "that eat grass do not mind the change of pasture. Creatures that live in water do not mind the change of pond. A slight change may be effected so long as the essential is untouched. Joy, anger, sorrow, happiness find no place in that man's breast, for to him all creation is one, and all things being thus united in one, his body and limbs are but as dust of the earth, and life and death, beginning and end, are but as night and day, and cannot destroy his peace. How much less such trifles as gain or loss, misfortune or good fortune? He rejects rank as so much mud, for he knows that if a man is of honorable rank, the honor is in himself and cannot be lost by change of condition, nor exhausted by countless modifications of existence. Who then can grieve his heart? Those who practice Tao understand the secret of this." "Master," said Confucius, "your virtue equals that of heaven and earth, yet you still employ perfect precepts in the cultivating of your heart. Who among the sages of old could have uttered such words?" "Not so," answered Lao Tzu. "The fluidity of water is not the result of any effort on the part of the water, but is its natural property. And the virtue of a perfect man is such that even without cultivating there is nothing which can withdraw from his way. Heaven is naturally high, the earth is naturally solid, the sun and moon are naturally bright. Do they cultivate these attributes?" Confucius went forth and said to Yen Hui, "In point of Tao, I am but as an animal cooler in vinegar. Had not the master opened my eye, I should not have perceived the vastness of the universe." When Chuang Tzu was at an interview with Duke Ai of Lu, the latter said, "We have many scholars, sir, in Lu, but few of your school." "In Lu," replied Chuang Tzu, "there are but few scholars. Look at the number who wear scholars' robes," said the Duke. "How can you say they are few?" "Scholars who wear round hats," answered Chuang Tzu, "know the seasons of heaven. Scholars who wear square shoes know the shape of earth. And scholars who loosely gird themselves are ready to decide whatever questions may arise. But scholars who have Tao do not necessarily wear robes, neither does the wearing of robes necessarily mean that a scholar has Tao. If your Highness does not think so, why not issue an order through the Middle Kingdom, making death a punishment for all who wear the robes without having the Tao?" Whereupon Duke Ai circulated this mandate for 5 days. The result being that not a single man in Lu dared to don scholars' robes, with the exception of an old man who, thus arrayed, took his stand at the Duke's gate. The Duke summoned him into the presence and asked him many questions on politics, trying to entangle him, but in vain. Then Chuang Tzu said, "If there is only one scholar in Lu, surely that is not many." Rank and power had no charms for poor Lu Chi. So he took to feeding cattle. His cattle were always fed, which caused Duke Mu of Qin to ignore his low condition and entrust him with the administration. Shun cared nothing for life or death. He was therefore able to influence men's hearts. Prince Yuan of Sung desiring to draw a map, the officials of that department presented themselves, and after making obeisance stood waiting for the order, more than half of them already licking their brushes and mixing the ink. One of them arrived late. He sauntered in without hiring himself, and when he had made obeisance, did not wait, but went off home. The prince sent a man to see what he did. He took off his clothes and squatted down bare-baked. "He will do," cried the prince. "He is a true artist." When Wang was on the tour of inspecting in Tsang, he saw an old man fishing. But his fishing was not real fishing, for he did not fish to catch fish, but to amuse himself. So, when Wang wished to employ him in the administration of government, but feared least his own ministers, uncles, and brothers might object. On the other hand, if he let the old man go, he could not bear to think of a people being deprived of such an influence. Accordingly, that very morning he informed his ministers, saying, "I once dreamed that a sage of a black color and with a large beard, riding upon a party-colored horse with red stockings on one side, appeared and instructed me to place the administration in the hands of the old gentleman of Tsang, promising that the people would benefit greatly thereby." The minister at once said, "It is a command from your highness father." "I think so," answered Wen Wang, "but let us try by divination." "It is a command from your highness the late father," said the minister, "and may not be disobeyed. What need for divination?" So the old man of Tsang was received and entrusted with the administration. He altered none of the existing statutes. He issued no unjust regulations, and when, after 3 years, when Wang made another inspection, he found all dangerous organizations broken up, the officials doing their duty as a matter of course, while the use of measures of grain was unknown within the four boundaries of a state. There was thus unanimity in the public voice, singleness of official purpose, and identity of interests to all. So, when Wang appointed the old man Grand Tutor, and then standing with his face to the north, asking him, saying, "Can such government be extended over the empire?" The old man of Tsang was silent and made no reply. He then abruptly took leave, and by the evening of that same day had disappeared, never to be heard of again. Yen Yuan said to Confucius, "If Wen Wang was unable to do this of himself, how was he able to do it by a dream?" "Silence!" cried Confucius. "It is not for you to criticize Wen Wang, who succeeded in fulfilling his mission. The dream was merely to satisfy the vulgar mind." Li Hu Kuo instructed Po Hun Wu Zhen in archery. Drawing the bow to its full, he placed a cup of water on his elbow and began to let fly. Hardly was one arrow out of sight ere another was on the sting, the archer standing all the time like a statue. "But this is shooting under ordinary conditions," cried Po Hun Wu Zhen. "It is not shooting under extraordinary conditions. Now let's climb a high mountain with you and stand on the edge of a precipice 1,000 feet in height and see how you can shoot then." Thereupon Wu Zhen went with Li Tzu up a high mountain and stood on the edge of a precipice 1,000 feet in height, approaching it backwards until 1/5 of his feet overhung the chasm, when he beckoned to Li Tzu to come on. But the latter had fallen prostrate on the ground with the sweat pouring down to his heels. "The perfect man," said Wu Zhen, "soars up to the blue sky, or dives down to the yellow springs, or flies to some extreme point of a compass without change of countenance. But you are terrified and your eyes are dazed. Your internal economy is defective." Tien said to Sun Shuao, "Sir, you have been 3 times called to office without showing any elation, and you have been 3 times dismissed without displaying any charm. At first I doubted you, but now I notice that your breathing is perfectly regular. How do you manage thus to control your emotions?" "I am no better than other people," replied Sun Shuao. "I regard office when it comes as something which may not be declined, when it goes as something which cannot be kept. To me both the getting and losing are outside my own self, and therefore I feel no charm. How am I better than other people? Besides, I am not conscious of office being either in the hands of others or in my own. If it is in the hands of others, my own personality disappears; if in mine, theirs, and amidst the cares of deliberation and investigation, what leisure has one for troubling about rank?" When Confucius heard this, he said, "The perfect sages of old, cunning men could not defeat them, beautiful women could not seduce them, robbers could not steal from them. Fu Zi and the Yellow Emperor could not make friends of them. Life and death are great, yet these gave them no pang. How much less then rank and power? The swords of such men pierced through huge mountains as though they had been nothing. They scanned into the abyss without getting wet, occupied lowly stations without charm. They filled the whole universe, and the more they gave to others, the more they had themselves." The Prince of Chu was sitting with the Prince of Fan. By and by, one of the officials of Chu said, there were 3 indications of the destruction of the Fun state. The destruction of the Fun state, cried the Prince of Fun, did not suffice to injure my existence. And while the destruction of the Fun state did not suffice to injure my existence, the preservation of the Chu state will not be enough to preserve yours. From this point of view, it will be seen that while we Fans have not begun to be destroyed, you Chus have not begun to exist.